Hello, everyone. How are you? So you are here for Balancing Hormones Naturally Without Birth Control class. My name is Karina Snow. I am a healing arts practitioner, Chinese medicine practitioner, and a mindset coach. And I work a lot with women and their menstrual cycles, also with pelvic floor issues and a lot of the emotions within all of that. I am a very, very firm believer that a very high percentage of our healing can happen naturally. And although I completely see that meds like birth control are so helpful during certain points in our life, and I certainly always want us to have access to this, always. I also am very aware of the many problems that hormonal birth control and actually the copper IUD can cause. And so I've started speaking about this more. And so here we go. If you're here during this class, you may have PMS, you may have irregular cycles, you may have like a shortened cycle that's popped up out of nowhere, you may have spotting, you may be diagnosed with anxiety or depression and are wondering if it is hormonally related. You might have skin issues, you might have sleep issues. All of these things can be addressed in a large percentage with self-care, herbs, foods, and really mindset practices also. But for this class, we're going to talk about some herbs that I really love to integrate into a daily practice. We're also going to talk a little bit about foods. I'm not going to go too food heavy today. I want to keep this kind of concise and manageable. But I am going to talk a little bit from a Chinese medicine perspective also about kind of the liver's role in this, because really, for me, it's really important to bear witness to the whole picture, right? The current, how Western science works currently is still very, very much like they're treating us like cars. And so they go in and they look at these different things, whether it's hormones or anything that's coming up on our labs, our trace mineral levels, which is all very helpful. But what I like to do is look at it from a Chinese medicine perspective, which is often kind of like stepping back from it all and being like, look, like if you didn't know this word hormones, what's actually happening in our bodies that we need to fix, and how can we do that with like just us without even like herbs and foods and supplements and things? How can we actually do it with just us? And that is actually what fascinates me the most about all this. And I think that's why I started working with mindset, because I was like, oh, this is actually what our liver specifically, I know I talk a lot about the liver, but this is actually specifically what our liver needs to be able to like process and move through these emotions. Anyway, digression. I do these classes live. I don't post them live because I just find that everyone has different schedules, and I feel like it's a little accosting to be like, you have to be here at 12 p.m. for my class. So I just send it to you. This is why I do this. But I do the class live. I don't have like a transcript. So, okay, so let's get started. Hormones. So we are going to talk mostly, when we talk about hormones in this class, it's going to be from the perspective of estrogen and progesterone, the sex hormones. And I won't get into it, mostly because for me, I can tell you about it, but it doesn't come naturally. And so I always like to stick to things that come really, really naturally to me. So I'll go over it, but I'm not going to get into the minutia of it because it always feels a little fake to me. So within the course of our menstrual cycle, the first half is the follicular stage, and the second half, I'm looking at my notes now because however many times I've taught this, I never trust myself. And this is why I don't get into the minutia. Okay, so I was right. The first half is the follicular stage and the second half is the luteal phase. And so the first, a really easy way just to think about this for a second, is the first half is when estrogen production is moving up and is getting produced. And then the second half of the phase of the menstrual cycle is when progesterone is higher. And so what starts to happen around mid-cycle is the estrogen kind of starts to diminish and progesterone starts to rise. So we've got first half follicular, second half luteal, we've got estrogen in the first half and progesterone in the second half. And so if your hormones, are appropriately balanced, then that's what's happening. You're going to have more estrogen in the first half of your cycle, and that's from menstruation, like day 1 through ovulation. And then it's going to drop, and then progesterone is going to get higher, ovulation to the end of your cycle. And so in happy hormone balance land, that perfect, woman who's like frolicking in the tulips, then everything's good, right? So let's talk for a second about what a happy, frolicking woman having a wonderful menstrual cycle looks like, right? Just to be annoying. Okay, so she starts her period without even really realizing it, right? Because she doesn't have a week of completely debilitating PMS. Okay, so she starts her period. She's like, oh, my period started. There's not pain. Okay. There's not bloating. There may be some digestive changes. It's really normal to have like period poop. But it's not like diarrhea for 2 days. She bleeds. So she bleeds not too much and not too little without spotting at either end or like a stopping and starting in the middle. So too heavy would be going through more than a super tampon, a super pad, a cup in an hour. Okay, so if you're going through one of those in 1 hour, that is too heavy. That is actually one of the instances where I do consider birth control for women. When it's that heavy, because that is absolutely exhaustive of your system and really dangerous if you're bleeding that much. And I have had many clients who they'll go on birth control for a time, will start to re-regulate their system, will go in with the herbs and with the dietary, and then they're able to go off their birth control and they don't have the crazy heavy periods. Okay, so normal, happy woman frolicking the tulips. She has a normal blood flow. There's not clots. And the color is red. It's not dark red and it's not mucousy. Okay. She bleeds for, we'll say 3 to 7 days. I really think that this is so different for everyone. And if you've had, your normal in length of time is going to be different than your girlfriend's normal, right? And I think that's important to remember. I've always been kind of a shorter cycle person and now even shorter. So like my short is still pretty normal at like 3 days. For someone else, if they all of a sudden started having a 3-day cycle, it would be weird. So normal, happy, frolicking woman in the tulips. She's bleeding for, what did I say, like 3 to 8 days. Somewhere in there. Okay, so after her period is over, she feels good. She doesn't feel like she's got a headache or a migraine, lightheaded, dizzy, super dry hair, skin, eyes, really nervous, anxiety kicks up. If you're having any of those symptoms right after your period, that is what I would call blood deficiency. And that's a Chinese medicine term. So if you're having any of those, then that is part of your pattern in all of this. I'm digressing. I'm gonna go back to normal, happy woman in the tulips. Okay, so she finishes her cycle. She feels fine. She feels good. Moving towards ovulation, oh, she notices that she ovulates. She might notice if she's ovulating on the left or the right side, but she doesn't have pain. She doesn't have the middle schmerz thing that is like pain, you know, when you ovulate. She might have a heightened sex drive. She might feel better, feel sexier. I always feel like super luscious around ovulation. I'm like, oh, my booty looks good. So she might have, you know, like heightened, like a luster in her skin. She might just feel better. After ovulation, moving into that premenstrual time, she might be a little emotional, but she is not depressed, anxious, suicidal. She is not falling back into old tendencies and habits. She is not having, you know, old traumas come up in a really intense way. It's unrealistic within normal, happy, frolicking woman in the tulips to tell her to describe her as having no flux in emotions throughout the month, right? That is completely unrealistic. But the intense side of the emotions is not normal. Okay. Okay, so that's an overview of like a normal cycle. So within that, you can think about where you're at. And again, it is really important for me just to say that again, like our emotions are going to change so much during the course of the month. And, you know, I'll do another class on that. But it's not to say that, you know, the phrase that comes to mind is like, it's a man's world. It's a man's world. You know, we're not men. You know, we are in this circadian rhythm throughout the month, and there is so much change that happens. But when the change is so great, if you're in so much pain, or if you never know when your period's happening, or if you are really depressed before your cycle, or if you feel like absolute shit after your cycle, it's too much. That's too much. Okay. So hormones are messengers. They're messengers. Don't shoot the messenger. I think that we give hormones a lot of shit. It's my hormones. Oh, I just want to balance my hormones. You know, it's like they get a lot of blame, but they're really just the messenger. And what I think is really interesting about this is that they message through the blood. They message through the blood. And in Chinese medicine, blood, Chinese medicine blood, I'll do the little Chinese medicine quotes, is not just blood. It's much more. And I talk about it like it's like blood, but it's like supercharged blood. So it's blood with qi. And it's blood with energy. And blood can have and take on different forms depending on your system and your pattern. You can have blood that is not flowing well. That's called blood stagnation. You can have heat in the blood. Sometimes that is what's happening when we have very, very painful periods. Sometimes that's heat in the blood. You can have deficient blood. That is what I was describing sometimes happens for people post-menstrual cycle, where you feel very dry, anxious, nervous. Sometimes sleep is a problem. There's a couple others. Blood deficiency, anxiety, dry eyes, dry hair, dry skin. What's the one I can't think of right now? I'm gonna take a sip of tea and try to think of it. Forgetfulness. I'm constitutionally blood deficient. I have to work in it a lot. And what that means is just that my system it's kind of just how my pattern has always been, and it's always something that I work on. People will say things like, oh, gosh, I'm really digressing. I'm sorry, guys. They'll say things like, I just really need a burger. I just really need a burger. So that's like me. I'm like the burger girl. Like, I eat quite a bit of red meat because it's like the most rejuvenating and like blood building food there is. It's like the quick and dirty approach to blood building. Okay, so let's go back to Chinese medicine. This is great, isn't it? Never a dull moment. So Chinese medicine, it's blood, it's qi, it's vital fluid source. It's not just blood. And so when there's hormones in that blood, depending on how your blood is functioning and your constitution, how you are, it's going to flow in different ways. So if you have blood deficiency, there may not be enough of those hormones moving where they need to go. If you have blood stagnation, so it's like clotting and other things too, but if you have blood stagnation, then your hormones aren't moving and getting where they need to go. So I find this really interesting and just a layer to think about. So let's see, let me just make sure I'm talking about what I want to be talking about. Okay. So we talked about what a regular-ish menstrual cycle looks like. I mentioned blood because I think it's really important just to understand that. Blood is also actually milk when we are breastfeeding. That's also considered blood in Chinese medicine. Fascinating. And do I want to talk about the liver right now? Let's see. I kind of do just want to talk about the liver for a moment. So liver in Chinese medicine is really fascinating. It's really a lot more than just the liver proper. It's more than just the organ itself, and this is always the case with our organ system. So liver channel, it runs kind of up the inner leg, going from the big toe all the way up the inner leg and wraps around the genitalia, both in men and women. And it's both sides of the body, bilateral. And then it goes up and it ends right below the breast. So it stops right there. I did a class a week or so ago, and we talked a lot about the liver channel and about kind of what happens when the liver qi is not flowing in this area. And this, of course, is also really interesting for like breast health because of where that channel stops. So liver channel is super, super, super important. It's the channel that I work the most with in practice because it relates to not just the menstrual cycle and our pelvic floor and our breasts and our abdomen too, like runs through the abdomen, but also our emotions. So with the liver and with the appropriate movement of qi within the liver, it's really easy for it to get blocked when our emotions are not being expressed. And again, this is kind of where I felt that there was this big missing gap, and why I started doing the lightning mindset coaching is because it moves people really quickly through this. So it's like, think about all these unexpressed emotions. For a lot of women, it's grief and anger. Actually, this is fascinating. There are correlations within our breasts and breast cancer. So for one breast, I always forget which one. I think it's the left has to do with grief, sadness, and the right has to do with anger. Yeah, so this is unexpressed, unresolved, right? So emotions, I always talk about, how emotions only last for like 90 seconds, right? It is so much better to feel the emotion, to surf that fucker out, than to stuff it, right? I was a stuffer for a really long time, and not just because I have tiny boobs and like I was stuffing I stuffed my emotions for such a long time until I learned how to move through them. And that shit will give you many, many problems and is the root of much disease, but that is another class. So learning how to express our emotions and ride through the waves of our emotions is so important for the health of our bodies and our breasts specifically. So the liver channel, it's fascinating. Liver qi imbalances come about a lot within our periods. So the big one that always comes up is PMS or PMDD. So this PMS is a very classic, what we call liver qi stagnation pattern. And by that, what I mean is that the qi, the energy of the liver channel, that shit is not moving good. Okay, so this happens really easily. It's super common. Obviously, a lot of people have PMS, but the symptoms are kind of interesting. So if you think about the symptoms of PMS, I'll just kind of go top down. So you might be teary, you might be irritable, you might have that breast tenderness or distension where your breasts feel kind of full and may even hurt. You may get bloated. You may get constipated, you may get gassy. And then I'm trying to think of any other. Some people get crampy, not so much. But mostly it's emotions, breast, and then the belly stuff. I hear the bloating and constipation a lot from people. So that's liver qi stagnation. That is the qi of your liver not appropriately moving in the body. Okay. And so what moves my kids and my husband? I am the one woman in a house full of boys. So what appropriately moves the liver in the body? This is really helpful to understand, right? And if you are an exerciser, if you run or bike or play a sport, then you're probably kind of aware of this. But I also find it's interesting. Some people who are some athletes that I know my sister, I think, was like this for a long time. Like she was such an athlete. I mean, it was daily running, or she did, triathlons, and when we move our body, full body motion processes our liver qi in the best way possible. I mean, better than herbs or foods or anything else we're going to do. It is the best way to move it. And so some people like my sister, who are always so used to exercising and moving, they don't always have to deal with all those crummy emotions that the rest of us have because they just process them through. Right? But that is such a better way than sitting with this shit. Okay, so liver qi stagnation, the PMS stuff, moving your body, full body, enjoyable movement. So this is really important, actually. And this is like the piece that kind of gets missed sometimes. So like if we're running on a treadmill or just like fill in whatever kind of exercise you hate doing, like I don't love running. I kind of I have this like runner's body. I'm like tall and thin and I don't really like it. It like hurts my shoulders and stuff and my neck gets all weird. But I love biking and I love dancing. And so doing those things, that's what for me actually moves my liver qi. If I run, I just get kind of irritated, honestly. So doing some yoga is another one. I really don't like yoga. Yeah. But that's just me. That's my issue. I'm more of a qigong girl. So doing some full body movement that you actually enjoy and dancing is really, really the best. So moving liver qi. Okay. Let's talk more specifically about some of the things that are going to balance your hormones in your body. So let's talk about some herbs, right? Okay, I'm drinking some herbal tea right now. This is a blend of red clover, mugwort, and then lemon balm. And then I put some rose hips in there. I've been feeling like I need more vitamin C lately. The rose hips are really lovely. And I think that's it. Sometimes I put chamomile, sometimes I put red raspberry leaf, but I don't think those are in this one. Mugwort is like my favorite herb right now. I drink it like every day. It tastes good. Oh, there's some sage in here too. It tastes really nice, and it has this really lovely quality of like relaxing, but like relaxing and like opening. It's expansive. That's what it is. And I think, you know, mugwort's used a lot for like dream life and being able to have like, you know, people use it to like have more interesting dreams and like to help them lucid dream. And I'm a very visceral person, so when I describe things sometimes it's a little weird, but like for me mugwort is like very like third eye, kind of like opens here and it opens like crown chakra. And it's got some nice like stuff in here too. It's very like, it's like heart opening, you know. It's like there's like a supportive tenderness to it. I don't know if mugwort's specifically hormone balancing, but I do feel like because so much of hormone balance is about cortisol, that anything that you can do that you know that that regulates your cortisol, your stress, is going to be incredibly helpful. So whether you're, you know, doing a salt bath or you're going for a long walk, whether you're having a conversation with an old friend or you're taking herbs, if it's something that balances your stress, that's going to be incredibly, incredibly helpful for hormone balance. So some of the, I'm just going to make a note because I want to cycle back to sleep at the end of this. Okay. I know you can't remind me, but that's almost what I wanted to say. Like, can you remind me to talk about sleep at the end of this? Okay, so let's talk about some herbs. So I mentioned red clover. It's something in my tea that I've been using a lot. Red clover is awesome. Oh my gosh, it's so awesome. It is the stuff that grows on your lawn, right? It is the same herb. So if you don't use pesticides or shit on your lawn, you know, in the summer, cut the hell out of that, bring it inside, dry it, you know, or buy a big bag of red clover from, if you're local in Burlington, you can get it from the rail yard or order it from Mountain Rose or whomever, you know, in your state. Red clover is awesome. And as far as like hormone balancing, like, yes, this is like where it's at. So it's fascinating. Some herbs are like, oh, you just want to take it if you're this or if you're that. Red clover, it's like everyone can be taking this. So if you're, it's a phytoestrogen, which some people are like, oh my God, what is that? I shouldn't be taking that. No, this is amazing. So if your estrogen levels are low, it raises them. And if your estrogen levels are too high, it blocks them from getting any higher. So it really does, it does both of these jobs, and it's an incredible regulator of our systems. People use it a lot for things like hot flashes, and also like dryness, like vaginal dryness. But I love it for PMS, and it's an incredible preventative in like lymphatic and breast health. So I have a lot of breast cancer in my family. It's always something that I am aware of. Red clover, it's one of these draining herbs. And when we think about stuff going on with our breasts and with our lymph, so connected, it's really important to not have like this buildup. And so red clover really effectively drains. And this herb is so effective. You know, when you take a draining herb, you pee it out. And so I have a cup of red clover tea. Within an hour, I pee a ton. So I know that it is, you can actually feel it working in your body. So red clover is great. It is also, you know, a lot of these herbs that I'm going to mention are also really high in minerals, which is super, super important. And I'm going to mention at the end just like how I really think it's important for us all to get some kind of like trace mineral testing to kind of understand what's going on in our bodies. But things like red raspberry leaf, nettle, and red clover are all so high in minerals, and it's like taking a vitamin in a lot of ways, and you know, a much more, you know, digestible form of such. So red clover is great. Okay, next one. I really, really like red raspberry leaf. You know, this is pretty common also. You know, these herbs are so common and simple, but they are so effective. So red raspberry leaf, always from mid-cycle through the end of the cycle, right before the period starts. So red raspberry leaf is like what you're going to take for PMS. Like it is amazing at reducing and moving chi and moving hormones where they need to go. So taking like a good strong dose of red raspberry leaf tea from mid-cycle towards the end of cycle. And you can absolutely mix it with things. It doesn't have to be just this herb. You know, you could mix it with some red clover. You can mix it with a little peppermint, lemon balm, and nettle. Okay. Few others that I really love. So wild oats are awesome. And I love Schizandra. Do you know Schizandra? It's amazing. It's got all of the flavors, all 5 flavors in it. And it's an herb that we use a lot in Chinese medicine. But it's really accessible. You know, you can make a tea out of it. You can simmer it. It's got like this amazing, like spicy tart sweetness to it. And so this is great. This is one of my favorites for really balancing the mood, but also maintaining proper blood glucose levels. So if you are someone that your blood sugar gets kicked out of balance really easily, then this is an excellent, excellent choice for you. It's really great if you have weird hunger stuff going on. So for people that are trying to balance their hunger and, you know, even their weight and mood, and also bring more like antioxidants into your diet. Schizandra and wild oats are actually both really, really excellent. Wild oats also are like, they're an adaptogen or they're an adrenal herb. So when I take these for a long time, what I notice in my body is that I feel more fortified. You can't see where I'm pointing, but I feel like a greater sense of stability actually radiating from my adrenals. So they're a gentle herb, but they're incredibly effective. Wild oats and Schizandra. And then, so stuff like dandelion is really, really excellent if you are having, again, like for some of the mood stuff and for the PMS, or if you feel like you are inflamed and like your liver is kind of overloaded, then dandelion's a really, really excellent choice. I was just reading what I wrote about it. Yeah, so dandelion is unique in that it actually supports the liver to break down hormones in your body. And so, yeah, excellent if you have some of those symptoms that I was talking about earlier that are like the liver qi stagnation or like the PMS symptoms. And also really excellent if you have stuff going on with your skin. If you're having regular breakouts, dandelion is the way to go. I will make a chai tea sometimes with dandelion, burdock, red root, and kind of simmer it and then add some kind of milk and honey. It's really, really nice. And just drink that, you know, daily. But you can also just do dandelion, you know, you can do dandelion by itself in the root form. You can simmer it and then make it into a tea. You can add a little maple, molasses, or honey if you don't like the taste. Okay. Dandelion, red raspberry, wild oats, Schizandra, and red clover. Yep. I'm going to stop there. I'm not going to go too crazy on the herbs. So preparing herbs, you know, what I really like to do, easiest way is to use like one of these baskets in a big mug or in a ball jar and put like good 2, you know, I'm like, this is my measuring scoop. So like 2 of these little scoops from your hand, like use a lot of herb. And steep it for a while. Like you don't have to steep it overnight. I always forget about it and it's so grassy in the morning. It's kind of intense. If you like that, then go for it. But definitely steep it for like 15, 20 minutes or longer, right? It's just going to bring out so much more of the herbs. And then all you do is pour boiling water over it, steep it for at least 15 minutes and then drink it. Okay. But do this like every day, right? Like if you do it like once a week, it's not going to do nearly as much as if you just get into the habit of doing this every day. Some people like to make like a big thing, especially in the summertime, like a big ball jar of herbs and then just like sip it over the course of a few days or make like an iced tea out of it. Okay. So I do want to talk specifically about one food that is, or one food thing that we're going to make that's really helpful. So if you are going off of birth control, or if you've recently gone off birth control, or if doesn't even matter if you've never been on birth control, regardless, this is one of the most effective things to balance your hormones. So you probably heard of seed cycling. And maybe you've done it, maybe you've tried it, maybe you haven't. But seed, SEED, is using 4 different types of seeds to balance your hormones throughout the month. And it's really not complicated the way that I'm going to tell you how to do it. Okay. So we're going to think back to the beginning when I bumbled through that explanation of our different, the different segments of our hormone production. So the first half of the cycle, that follicular stage, that is when estrogen production is higher. And then that second stage, the luteal phase stage, is when progesterone is higher. So the seeds that you will be eating during each of those phases correlates to the production of those hormones and regulating them in the most happy, beneficial way. So first half of the cycle, the 2 seeds are pumpkin and flaxseed. Raw pumpkin, raw, unground, when you buy it, flaxseed. So that is really important. Buy raw seeds, don't buy toasted seeds. So you buy your seeds, you bring them home, and you have to grind them at home. So if you have a Vitamix, that works so well. If you have like a spice grinder or like a coffee grinder that you can wash out, that also works really well. What I do is I grind a bunch and then I do put it in the freezer. I don't grind it like every single day. That's annoying. So first half of the cycle, again, pumpkin and flax. Okay, I'm going to jump to the second half of the cycle, and then I'll come back and explain how we make them. Second half of the cycle, you're going to do sesame and sunflower. And I find that's kind of easy to remember. Those are like the 2 S's. So first half, pumpkin and flax. Second half, sesame and sunflower. So why these seeds? What's up with this? So pumpkin's high in zinc. And that supports production of progesterone at the very end of the cycle. And flax is, I'm reading this because I always forget this too. So flax is excellent. You can do flax by itself. It basically binds to the excess estrogen and moves it out of the body through your bowels. So if you think about that, anytime you feel like hormonal or like something might be a hormone issue, think about your poop too, okay? So I mentioned blood in the beginning or in the middle, you know, as being like where the hormones are like jumping into to like get sent to where they're going to go. And so it's really important that our, you know, we have like adequate blood flow and we have actually adequate like amount of blood in our body. We're not too blood deficient. But by that same token, it's also really important that we're pooping, and we're pooping regularly, and we're pooping with enough form, like it's not super sloppy diarrhea, that the excess hormones are actually getting the fuck out of our body. Because when you feel hormonal, that is because that shit is all stuck inside of you and you feel like absolute garbage. It's horrible. It's horrible. I felt like that for years. So we gotta poop. And how do we poop? Well, seeds are really, really helpful to do this. So in and of itself, even taking out all the signs, see like, oh, there's zinc in this one. Oh, this one has lignans. Like seeds are super helpful at binding and helping us to move our bowels. Flax is awesome. If you're listening to this and you're like, oh my God, I can't do this, just do flax. Okay, so pumpkin seed and flax seed, you're gonna eat 1 to 2 tablespoons of those every day for the first half of your cycle. Second half of your cycle, the seeds are sesame and sunflower. And so sunflower contains vitamin E. It also contains selenium. And this is helpful to basically detox the liver and remove excess estrogen from from the body. Sesame is high in zinc, which again helps to support the production of progesterone. So I'm just going to do a side note here. If you are thinking like you want to get some tests done, one thing that I find really helpful is to find out about your trace minerals. And I believe that naturopaths do this. But finding out about zinc, finding out about copper, knowing this is really, really helpful. And absolutely 100% do this if you're ever thinking about getting a copper IUD, because if your copper levels are high and you get that fucker in your body, it will create a lot of issues within your system. And so this is when women tend to get really, really intense anxiety. And I don't know, like, this is what pisses me off so much, that we are not telling people this and not making these connections. But, you know, if you have a friend with a copper IUD and she has anxiety or she has headaches and migraines or, you know, any of these really more intense issues, intense PMS, please ask her to get her trace mineral levels tested, because it can absolutely be copper. You know, the copper IUD, you know, I thought for years that it was like the most innocuous thing in the world. And it turns out it's really not. It's really messed up, because that thing sits in your body and it reacts to your trace mineral levels in your body. And then it can also corrode. Like, how messed up is that? So I so wish that was the answer. I so wish it was the answer, but it's really, really not for a lot of people. Okay. So how are we going to make these? You can obviously just like add these to a smoothie or something, but here's what I do. So I get let's go with pumpkin and flax. I get the pumpkin and flax and I make it into a bliss ball. So I add some nut butter, coconut oil, maple syrup, you could add chocolate, you could add raisins or cranberries, whatever you want. And you make them into little bliss balls. So like in between 1 and 2, I would go more with like 2+ tablespoons, because there's other things in it too. And make them into bliss balls and put them in the freezer. And they're a great snack. I find them actually really helpful for like balancing blood sugar throughout the day, as well as doing all of these other great things. So make 2 separate batches. Make your first cycle batch, make your second cycle batch. Put them in the freezer, forget about it. You only have to do it once a month. It's awesome. This shit is so, so helpful. Okay. So we talked about herbs, we talked about seed cycling. Let's see. I don't want to talk about too much more. I will say, people always ask about supplements. Fish oil and magnesium are the 2 biggies. And fish oil, I mean, honestly, you can do that through foods. And it is really great to, you know, boost your omegas through foods. I love like ghee and butter, and of course, you know, just regular fish. But it is also really helpful to take a supplement. And then magnesium. You know, magnesium really helps to decrease your cortisol. And as I said, you know, earlier, like that is one of the most important things here. We're going to talk about sleep. So yeah, do take magnesium. And it's actually really good at regulating blood sugar imbalances also, which for some of us can be a big problem. So the last thing I want to talk about is I'm just scanning here. Yeah, I'm going to talk about sleep for just a second. In Chinese medicine, the blood in the body goes back to the liver to be bathed at night. And, you know, and that's kind of floral language, but what that is basically saying is that if you don't sleep at night, then your system is going to get really messed up and it's not going to regulate in the way that it's supposed to. Because if you're awake, the blood can't rest in your liver. So sleep and sleeping at night is obviously really helpful for keeping your cortisol levels more balanced. It's really helpful for keeping the chi of your liver and the blood of your liver at a good level and moving in your body. It is really interesting, actually. So there's a couple time things that happen at night. So the first one that I will say happens at around 11 p.m. So at 11 p.m., we have this like Chinese medicine clock. At 11 p.m., the yang energies start to rise. And so you may notice if you try to go to sleep right around 11 or 11:15, it's like the most difficult. It's so much easier to go to sleep around like 10, 10:15, even 10:30. Or, you know, then you kind of have to like wait till like 12:30, which is really like it's really not optimal, right? So going to sleep before 11, awesome, really, really helpful, super helpful for balancing hormones, cortisol. And then the other thing that's really interesting is that the liver, the chi of the liver starts to activate around 1 a.m. in the morning. So from 1 to 3 in the morning, that liver chi is super, super active. And so this is a lot of times when people are like waking up, like bright-eyed, like, oh my gosh. And then of course, like liver is all about like vision. And so you wake up because of the chi being activated in your liver meridian, but then you're awake because the essence of the liver meridian is all about like vision and like dreaming and like ideas. And so for anyone creative, for any artists out there, you know this is the time when your ideas come. This is why you have the notebook next to your bed, because when you wake up, you record that shit, right? So this is fine if we just wake up and go back to sleep. It gets annoying when we wake up and we can't get back to sleep, right? And then, yeah, that's the last thing I'm going to say about that. Okay. I made a whole video a couple weeks ago on the liver and on that specific thing with like the crossover in between the liver and the lung channel. So I'm not going to go over it right now. Okay, so I think this is good. I think you guys got a lot of information. There is an upcoming program, Beyond Birth Control. If you want more of this, I walk you through all these things. We do herbs, we do supplements, we do dietary, and we do a lot of yoni steaming, which I didn't talk about here, but it's awesome. It is the practice of sitting over a pot of warm water with herbs in it, specifically to move into the steam moves up through the cervix. It moves blood, it moves chi, it invigorates the body. You feel, a lot of people use it to feel more sensual. A lot of people use it to help with cramps, to help regulate their menstrual cycles, to regulate PMS and PMDD, among many other things. Infertility, I've had babies come or babies get made after this. So it's excellent. I love yoni steaming and I talk a lot about it. Beyond Birth Control, let's see, opens December 28th, which is soon. It's a 6-week program. It is one-on-one. It's all with me. And we do 3 or 4 distance consults also, where I do energy work with you, distance energy work, and mindset coaching. So if you're interested in that program, let me know. It's $775. There are payment plans. And just drop me a message if you want more information on that, or you can check out my site, karinasnow.com. Thank you so much for being here. This was really fun. Thanks for moving with me. Much love to you all. Bye-bye.